Rhonda here, RK3 Designs, and today we're going to do viewer request for Venetian Gold Granite. I've had a few people request some granites that aren't just the regular earth tone granites. It's actually a Venetian gold granite. So I started researching a little bit and looking at pictures, and obviously there's a huge variety, but this is gonna be my version. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna get started with a sample board that I prepped with just white Behr paint and primer, and we're gonna get started doing pre-epoxy designs, meaning we're gonna decorate our board before we pour the epoxy. Then once we pour the epoxy, we're gonna do a couple of steps after that to kind of make it all come together. All right, so first of all, I'm gonna come in with some gold mica powder, and it's mixed with 91% isopropyl alcohol. I mixed it a ratio of 1/4 ounce to 8 ounces of alcohol. Make sure you shake it. Now, when I come down on the board, I want it to come out in like little puddles, if that makes sense. I don't want it to be a very fine mist. So I want to check my spray pattern and kind of make sure that it's kind of coming out in big drops. Also, I'm going to come up over the top and not shoot across, because if I shoot across, I'm going to send out a pattern where it looks kind of across the board. I want it to be more straight down. So there we go. I like that. Now I'm not squeezing my trigger all the way. I'm just barely squeezing it so that I get a really cool puddle type of a pattern. Constantly go back and shake your bottle because your mica powders are moving. So you want to get that, as much of that mica powder up into your spray nozzle as possible. Now, I'm not going for 100% coverage. I want that white to be part of my design, so I'm not going 100% over the entire surface. All right, so I like that. Now I'm gonna go a little bit finer mist, and I'm gonna hit my edges, knowing that my edges are going to run just a little bit. So I'm really not too worried about that. I'm gonna come around the front and do the front. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is let this dry, and then we'll come back and do the next step. You can force dry this, meaning you can get a heat gun, come up nice and high, and kind of force dry this, but be really careful that you don't cause it to run and make a really melded finish. I like to basically let it air dry. Okay, so I've let the gold dry, and I'm kind of thinking I want a little bit more contrast. So now I'm gonna come back in with brown mica powder mixed with the isopropyl alcohol. And I could have done this at the same time. I just kind of started thinking when I saw it dry that I wanted a little bit more depth. So I'm gonna come back now with the brown. Same thing, kind of getting into the puddle. And you don't even have to go all over. Granite can be variations of color all over the piece. So I like that. I'm not gonna do any more of that. I like just enough contrast right there. Okay, so I've now let the brown dry. And when that dries, it's not gonna come off. You just wanna be really careful that you don't scratch it, because it is a little bit fragile. All right, so this is all background noise, what I call it. It's all gonna be in the background. We're really not gonna see a whole lot of this. I just wanted to add a little bit of metallic to come through. All right, so now I'm gonna come in with my Rust-Oleum Gold Rush. Get me a bag. Now, if you're using a shopping bag, make sure you turn the bag inside out so the writing isn't exposed, because the spray paint, when you spray on there, will cause that ink on the bag to come off, and it'll transpose into your finish. All right, so I want my bag to be fairly rough on the surface. I don't want it to be flat. So I'm gonna be constantly messing with it and getting it to have a lot of texture. So shake it up really well. And then another pro tip is when you're doing a lot of spray paint, wear a mask. I can't do that for my videos because I can't talk to you guys. But when I'm here by myself, I do put a mask on. But I also take my spray paint and I spray it down away from me, directly into the piece. Instead of coming back here and trying to get the whole bag, I do it very close. All right. Now, when I come in here, I purposely want big chunks of color, because when I went and looked at the sample pictures online, the colors were very distinct. The granite had very large, distinct colors. So I want to make sure I incorporate that into the finish. So as I'm applying the paint, don't smash it down, okay? See what happens when you smash it down? You really kind of get a flattened big blob of color. You don't want to do that. You want to keep it very light, so just your high points on your bag are touching the surface. So as I touch the surface, I'm really just barely touching it. And I'm constantly moving my bag around. And don't forget your edges. If anybody knows my husband, you know his favorite saying is don't forget your edges. Okay, now remember, you can always come back and add more color later. So don't get too much at first. Now we're just building and building and building color. All right, I like that. Remember, I still want the white, the original white on the board to be part of my finish. All right, so now we're gonna come in with a dark taupe. And I know that you say dark taupe with a gold. Actually, if you go and really blow up some of these photos that are on the internet, it had kind of a taupey tone to it. So again, this is background. And it's gonna really play in to our finish. Again, big chunks, big blocks of color. Very lightly tapped on there. Now I don't want to do this. I'm going to show you what not to do. Don't come and go one little area over and over again. Look at the difference between this and then look at the difference between this. This looks very muddy. I don't want that, but I can fix that. So I'll show you how to fix it as soon as it dries. So we're going to continue. I could definitely see this finish in like a powder room where you wanted just a little bit of that bling to kind of show through. I think this would be beautiful with a sink on top that maybe had just a hint of gold in it. Maybe a clear glass with just a hint of gold. I think that would be really pretty. All right, so I like that. So I'm going to show you how to fix that little area right here where we kind of got muddy. Now you want to make sure it's dry before you do it, because if you just keep putting wet on wet on wet, it's just going to stay really muddy. So I'm going to come back with some white. Now this is a true white, and it's going to mimic the board. So basically what I'm doing is I'm bringing the background back up. There, now I made it a little more splotty. You're not really noticing that there's so much muddiness right there. I've kind of brought that white back up. All right, so we're gonna continue to layer colors. Now, the bag is really starting to kind of get dirty and hard to work with, but I actually like it because I can make it a little more textury and it really gives some cool effects. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in with almond. I don't have much left, but if you don't have almond, you can also use a Navajo white or any off-white will do the same thing. So I'm kind of coming over. Now this to me really makes the finish. I really like this part. It's not a stark white, so it's not boom, in your face kind of color. It really makes it look like the real granite. Again, I don't want to go crazy with this color. I still want to utilize the white background. I'm liking this. I noticed in a lot of my sample boards that there was little spots of black. Not a lot, but ever so often there was some black. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come in with my black, and I'm ever so randomly going to put some black. I'm going to be very careful with that because I don't want to overdo it on my black. All right. Now, another thing that I noticed was there was a color that kept coming up in all of the pictures that I was looking at, and it was almost like a reddish, earth tony color. So the closest thing in my mind that I could get to kind of recreate that was Kona brown. But what I noticed, it really wasn't in the same design as it is with all the other colors. It was almost like little random drips. So I was thinking, how can I get that look? I know I couldn't bag it, and I knew I couldn't spray it. So what I did is I take the paint, and I'm going to put it in a cup. And I'm just going to capture that color. Put your hand over it. Let all those fumes kind of die down. Perfect. So what I do now is I have a colorant with no aerosol. Perfect. All right, and so I noticed on the samples, they were almost like little drips. So I thought I'd come up here and just kind of randomly put some of those drips in the piece. Even kind of throw some across here. Okay, so I really like this finish. And now, you can, if you choose to do this and you have this product, it's really a fun product and it makes the granite look a little more realistic. It's actually by Montana brand paints, and it's called Granite Effect. They also make a Montana marble effect, but this is actual Granite Effect. It's really important that you shake it well, and it gives texture. So I'm going to spray this on the side, make sure it's coming out correctly. See that? Now you think that that's actually like stone, but it's very wet. So after you spray it, you need to just let it dry and don't go any farther. Let that dry completely before you go to the next step. So I'm just going to kind of come in here, and ever so often, I'm going to spray a little bit, and it really kind of makes it look real. It kind of gives, especially on those edges, it lets you get some of that color in there. Just kind of granification, tiny bit. All right. Okay, so I'm going to let all of this dry. We'll come to the next step, which is adding our epoxy. Okay, so now our paint is dry. I've mixed up clear epoxy, and I've put a little bit of gold dust. And I'm using Stone Coat Countertop Epoxy. Plenty of open time. I really love this product. All right, and again, I'm just gonna use my hands. I really like to use my hands. Okay, so for this portion, I'm not really gonna do a whole lot. The finish as it is, once you put that epoxy on it, all of those colors just really seem to pop and jump out at you and almost look real, just like it is. But I'm gonna put that out over the top. Now what I like to do is let my epoxy set up for about 20 or 30 minutes. And the reason I do that is because the next step that we do, I don't want the epoxy to move a lot. I really want it to kind of stay. So I want that epoxy to have set up just a little bit. I also don't want to use a lot of heat at this point. If I don't see bubbles down, I'm going to barely hit that surface with heat, and I don't see many bubbles at all. So I'm just going to really quick, and that's it. All right, good. I'm going to let this set for about 20 or 30 minutes. Okay, so I've let my epoxy set, and it's not so much that I let it set for 30 minutes. What I did is I let it set long enough to start gelling up or start to kind of get thick. That's what's more important as opposed to how much time. So if I were in a really warm environment, say in your 80s, 85, my 30 minutes may have been 15 minutes. But because it's about 74 degrees in here right now, about 30 minutes is what I'm looking at. If it was much cooler in here, then it would be a little bit longer. So I'm really going for the stage that the epoxy is in as opposed to just 30 minutes. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna kind of cause some fractures, make it look a little bit more granified. But what I did, and I've never done this before, so this is gonna be a first. We're gonna see if it works or not. You're gonna get to see an epic fail or an epic wow. All right, so I've taken black spray paint and I did the same thing. I sprayed it in the cup. Pro tip, make sure you are using a paper cup. If you do this in a plastic cup, it will eat through your plastic cup or a styrofoam cup. So make sure you're using paper. All right, so now I'm gonna just come in here and I'm gonna put drops of black down because I want random spots. Because I noticed in all of my pictures that it was fractured, but it wasn't fractured all over the piece. Now I'm gonna come in with clear isopropyl, and I'm gonna fog it very lightly. All right, so I really like that. I like how it's starting to move, but I'm really not liking that it's spotty. So I'm gonna come back over now and ever so lightly, I'm gonna kind of fog it in areas. Very light fog. And now I'm gonna come in with the gold and I'm gonna refracture. Now, as I'm spritzing this epoxy, I'm barely squeezing the trigger with the alcohol. I'm not getting a lot of alcohol in there because you really don't want to saturate your surface with a lot of alcohol. Okay, I'm liking the fact that I've got variations of black. What I'm not liking is that it's in a spot. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna kind of rearrange my spots here. So I'm coming in with a tissue, paper towel actually, and I'm just gonna kind of touch some of those areas and I'm gonna make them not quite so in a dot. Kind of taking those dots away. All right. Now, also what I'm noticing is my fogging is starting to kind of close up, which is naturally what it'll do. This time, I'm gonna come in with my hand and I'm gonna make bigger drops. So now I'm gonna come in and cause the fractures, but it's gonna cause it to really open up. All right, so I have enough color on the top. Now I'm gonna come back in with clear and do the same thing. You can even spritz it to kind of break up some of that color. I like this a lot. Very important that you don't do too much alcohol. It looks like I'm putting a lot of alcohol on, but I'm barely spritzing any on the surface. I love this. Okay, to me, this looks like a real piece of granite. Very important. Don't judge your piece immediately after you spritz it. Give it some time. It's got to be able to work and to move. Don't spritz it and say, ooh, I don't like that, and spritz it again immediately. Let it move, let it do its thing, and then go back and you can always fix it. Hey guys, I hope you like this take of my version of Venetian Gold Granite. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel so that you can receive notifications every time we post a video. Visit our website for a list of supplies and some additional photos of this finish, and check out our online course, Online Epoxy Pro. And remember guys, until next time, don't be scared, move forward, and be creative.